Every year in the MLB, we have a list of guys who don't get the media attention they deserve for the performances they are putting up. And by all terms, they are underrated. Now, the term underrated is in the eye of the beholder. I believe these guys haven't gotten the media attention they deserve, but maybe you think they've gotten too much, or you have other players in mind you think are more deserving. And that is perfectly fine. We can have that discussion down below in the comment section, but these are the lists that I came up with. Starting with Drew Rosman of the Tampa Bay Rays. The Tampa Bay Rays are the best team in baseball so far this season, and whenever you're playing second fiddle to Shane McClanahan, you're not going to get the clout you deserve. Also, Tampa Bay Rays pitchers are historically known for not pitching extensive innings, and therefore he cannot put up the counting stats that you might want to see. But on a per rate basis, this guy is as good as most pitchers in the MLB. Putting up a 2.62 ERA, a 1.052 WHIP, striking out 9.5 batters per game, 2.2 walks per game, giving him a 2.59 WHIP. He has a cutter, four-seam, sweeper, sinker, and curveball. And whenever you're talking about this guy's phenomenal, he goes out there every so often, gives them good performance. He did just go down with injury. They're still kind of waiting to see how that turns out. So unfortunately, it might be some time for him, but so far this season, he's been phenomenal. If you look at his baseball savant page, they back that up. The Rays are historically gone for guys with great background analytics. He has a great fastball spin rate. Nobody's really hitting him that hard. He has good K rate. Everything's kind of in the red for the most part, except for fastball velocity. But whenever you have a good spin rate, it kind of negates that in a way. Second up on the list, we have Joe Ryan of the Minnesota Twins. I think the biggest storyline coming out of the Twins, at least from the starting pitching department, is Sonny Gray's, revitalization of his career. But whenever, you talk about Joe Ryan, you might be talking about a better pitcher overall, especially this year. With a 2.16 ERA that gives him 6th in the MLB and an 8.4 WHIP, is second in the MLB as of right now. He has a career best 10.3 strikeouts per 9 innings, walking 1.3 batters per 9 innings, which is also a career best, giving him a 2.54 WHIP or FIP. He's mainly a four-seam split finger guy, but has a sweeper and sinker in there as well. Joe Ryan's also one of these guys, unbelievably under talked about. He is one of the best pitchers at making people chase, making people miss, and misses barrels quite a lot. Again, one of these new age pitchers that are big onto adding a sweeper. He doesn't throw a big amount because, again, he's that four-seam, split finger type of guy. But, it's been a big part of his, vitalization here this season. And honestly, the numbers he's putting up aren't that ridiculous, especially whenever you go look at his baseball savant page, because a lot of his numbers, they are as far in the red as can be. A pitcher for the Chicago Cubs that has gotten some notoriety, especially here of late. He's in that early Cy Young conversation. Is Justin Steele, the lefty, at 27 years old. Justin Steele is on a team where a lot of the bats grab the headlines. You always have the Cody Bellinger, the Dansby Swansons, even Patrick Wisdom, who's having a great season. But you have a pitcher right here that has a 2.44 ERA, a 1.30 WHIP, striking out 7.6 batters per 9 innings, which actually is a career worst, but is walking a career best 2.4 batters per 9 innings, giving him a 3.05 FIP. Whenever you have that much disparity between his FIP and his ERA, you are going to probably see those numbers even out over some time. But he is doing a great job of limiting hard contact, and I think that if he can continue to do that, he's going to put up good stats. And even at a 3 ERA, that's really not bad. That's actually a pretty good season by all standards, especially if you were counting on Justin Steele coming into the year. Just an underrated pitcher pretty much all across the board, putting up great numbers so far this season. A pitcher who has had pretty much a mediocre career, or, always had good wins and just good baseline numbers, but, he's been an above average pitcher his career. I shouldn't say mediocre. Is Eduardo Rodriguez of the Detroit Tigers. Rodriguez is putting up a historic season right now, and I don't know how sustainable it is, but for right now, let's just go ahead and appreciate it while we can. He has a 2.06 ERA, 0.86 WHIP, striking out 8.26 batters per 9 innings, 1.91 walks, giving a 3.07 FIP. Again, that's a huge disparity between your FIP and your ERA. It's going to even out at some point over the course of the season. But for right now, let's just appreciate it. There's a four-seam cutter, changeup, sinker, slider. Slider's really rare pitch for him. He's barely thrown it this season. Another pitcher that isn't one of these new age pitchers is trying to throw as hard as he can. Instead, he's just doing good at limiting hard contact, keeping the hitters just hitting softly, not hitting the ball hard. I mean, you can't ask for much more than that. He's only in like the 16th percentile in fastball velocity, so he has to do something to kind of throw these hitters off, and he's doing that so far this season. He did kind of just get roughed up by the Pirates as I'm recording this, but a phenomenal season, needs to be talked about more, having a great year. On to the next guy, another guy that just kind of went down with injury, unfortunately, is Dustin May of the Los Angeles Dodgers. It's looking like he'll be out for a month or so. At least that's the early kind of diagnosis, and that's kind of been the story of this guy's career. He's already pitched the second most innings in a single season that he has in his career. He's only pitched like 40-something. But another guy that was having a great year up to this point. Now, his peripheral numbers are great, but his underlying numbers aren't the greatest. But for the peripheral numbers, he's having a 2.68 ERA, 9.36 WHIP, striking out only 6 batters per 9 innings, walking 3, and has a 3.37 FIP. Again, big disparity, but for right now, let's just appreciate it for what it is. He does have certain good underlying stuff, but like his curve spin rate, his fastball spin rate, his fastball velocity, all are pretty good, but hitters are hitting him. They're just not hitting, they're just not falling, I guess is what I should say, because he's doing a great job in terms of, not giving up home runs, not giving up hits. But whenever you look at the peripheral numbers like average exit velocity, hard hit percentage, stuff like that, it's not the greatest, but Dustin May, he's always going to be a good pitcher. We know what this guy can bring. He always puts up great spin rates. Just a matter of harnessing that talent and realistically just being out there for a decent, season, a decent amount of time, because this guy has been on the injuries list more than he's been playing, unfortunately, and hopefully he can figure that out, because this guy could genuinely be one of the best pitchers in baseball if he can just simply be on the field. Onto the hitters, we have my favorite probably story of the season so far in Brent Rooker of the Oakland Athletics. In case you guys missed it, I made a full video of him. I'll link that down below, as well as put something up here on the screen for you. Brent Rooker, the Oakland Athletics, he's making his first year in Oakland. It's probably going to be his last, because he'll probably get traded at the deadline. He's having a phenomenal season by all standards. Hitting in Oakland's never the easiest thing in the world, and he's making it look easy. He's pretty much in the 90-something percentile on every single good stat that you could have about him. Hard hit percentage, average exit velocity, barrel percentage, everything that you could hope for. He is whiffing a decent amount, but come on, what are we talking about at that point? He is just smashing baseballs. And I think it shows in his traditional stats. He's hitting 304 with a 418 on base, 624 slugging, which leads the league, giving him a 1,042 OPS and a 194 OPS plus, which also leads the league, with 11 home runs and 30 RBIs. And importantly, obviously, if you look at the baseball savant, these numbers are sticking. But some core things that he's done is limit the strikeouts and improve his walks. That's some stuff that you really look for whenever you look for a guy that's improving as a true hitter. And I think he's done, everything that you could possibly ask in terms of that stuff to become a better hitter. Obviously, he's putting up a great year. He should be everyone's, one of their top guys at the trade deadline, because this guy's going to be on the market and he is putting up a phenomenal year. Not the greatest outfielder in the world, but you're not getting Brent Rooker to, play the outfield and play a good outfield. You're getting him to smash home runs and, hit the ball hard, and that's what he's doing so far this year. Another guy that improved his, strikeout rate, his walk rate over the offseason and and the early part of this season was Nolan Gorman. Came out with the Cardinals last year, and he looked solid, but this year he looks like he has taken another step. I'm still kind of, whiffing on a lot of baseballs, but, whenever you're hitting the ball as well as he is right now, it doesn't really matter. He doesn't really get looked at that much because of the rest of the team is realistically struggling. I know Nolan Arenado seems like he's starting to figure it out, and then hopefully the team will, but, Nolan Gorman is kind of getting overlooked just because of the team's overall struggles. Nolan Gorman's hitting 285 with a 382 on base, 593 slugging, giving him a 975 OPS and a 167 OPS plus. 10 home runs, 33 RBIs, and it's only his second year. We know what this guy was hyped as, and we know that he's on a Cardinals team that always seems to produce talent regardless of, you know, who the talent is, how much of a pedigree they come with. So it's exciting to see this guy kind of breaking out and kind of taking that next step that we all knew that he could. A player that we didn't know had this kind of step in him was Lamonte Wade Jr. of the San Francisco Giants. He did have a good season back in 2021, but it wasn't quite at the level that he's having this season. He is currently hitting .278 with a .435 on base and .513 slugging, giving him a .948 OPS and a .161 OPS plus. With 7 home runs, 15 RBIs, and he's in the top 1% of walk rate. And if you go look at his Baseball Savant, I'm going to harp on this. He has good peripherals too. He's excellent at not chasing. He's barreling baseballs, maybe not to the level that his slash line would represent, but he is just doing a great job putting the bat to the ball. He doesn't really whiff a whole lot, and he's hitting the ball really hard a lot of the time, or he's hitting the ball hard a lot of the time, finding the barrel of the bat. And if you continue to do that, you're going to get really good results. And I think it's been great for him to kind of break out. It's always exciting to see one of these later career guys have a great season. And I think that just being in San Francisco, he kind of gets overlooked. They normally don't have a lot of guys like making into the mainstream media for some reason or another, but he is doing phenomenal this season, and he just isn't a guy that makes headlines, makes social media posts, stuff like that. So I'm glad to see he's having a great year. Another guy that I think everybody's been waiting for him to hit is Jonah Heim of the Texas Rangers. Now, he didn't sacrifice his defense to become a good hitter. He is still a great framer, at least by Savant's numbers so far this season. But back to the hitting side, he's hitting .313 with the .368 on base and .519 slugging, giving him an .887 OPS, a .142 OPS plus. Only has 6 home runs, but he has 31 RBIs. Again, he is still a good defensive player, and on a Texas Rangers team, he doesn't necessarily need to be the star of the show. You have Marcus Semien, Corey Seager coming back. You have a team that has a lot of talent. And you're in first place, so you don't necessarily need to be the star of the show, so that probably takes a lot of pressure off of him. And to get these numbers out of a catcher is phenomenal, and I'm happy to see him finally start hitting because he's gotten a lot of grief over the years. So I'm happy to see him finally start hitting this season. Another player I was absolutely shocked of was from my favorite team, the Pittsburgh Pirates, in Connor Joe. Now, a lot of the storylines this year obviously was their hot start, Andrew McCutchen coming back and stuff like that. But Connor Joe has made waves on this team. He is hitting great. He's smacking the ball around. He's actually, if you look at slugging, he's kind of underperforming, especially from the expected values. But just to look at his numbers, he's hitting .261, 356 on base, .530 slugging, .886 OPS, giving him a .141 OPS plus. He only has 5 home runs, 13 RBIs, but he's on a team that isn't necessarily the greatest. They've been slumping, especially here of late. But whenever you talk about the guy that has a great approach at the plate and does not chase and does not miss a whole lot, you are talking about Connor Joe. He is literally the 100th percentile in chase rate. And every single one of his numbers, they might not be elite, but they're definitely solid numbers that you can work with, especially for the player that they probably thought they were getting, or at least a lot of the general public thought they were getting. Connor Joe definitely needs to be getting some more clout whenever it comes to mainstream media information. And finally, I did want to throw another guy onto the list just because there are some players that are getting injured, and it's not really, I don't want to say it's not fair to put them on the list because they deserve to be on the list, but moving forward, obviously, if they're injured, they can't make as much of an impact. So I wanted to go with another guy that I am familiar with, and another guy that's having a good year is Elias Diaz. Now, his peripheral numbers aren't as great as some of the other guys on here, but his mainstream numbers are phenomenal. He's hitting .328 with a .383 on base, .462 slugging, giving him an .846 OPS, a .119 OPS plus, with 3 home runs and 18 RBIs. I know those aren't the greatest counting stats, but whenever you're talking about a catcher who is still okay at defense, and who was looked at as probably one of the worst catchers in the MLB, if we're being fair, coming into the worst starting catchers anyway, coming into the year. I think he's putting up a good performance. Now, is he just like this elite, top of the line catcher? No, but whenever you're talking about it, being, having a good batting average, having a good year with the bat, and having a decent year behind the plate in terms of defense, I think that's a major win for Elias Diaz. Probably earned himself some more time in the majors, if he can continue this track. Again, I'm not the biggest fan of his peripherals. He doesn't barrel the ball a whole lot, not hitting the ball exceptionally hard. And he does chase a good bit, but he's hitting the ball, he's getting hits. He's hitting the ball like he's not hitting the ball horribly, but I think he's getting a little bit more lucky than he maybe should. But it is what it is. Again, I'm just taking it for what the information I have. He's having a good year. I'm going to give him his props while I can. I'm excited for him. As a former Pirate who had his best season maybe in 2019. So it's been a while since this guy's actually been like producing. So I'm happy to see him finally, putting up some numbers with the Rockies. Another factor that also makes me think he's not having as good of a year as maybe we think. But, he's having a good year so far. So let's go ahead and give him his props, Elias Diaz. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you next time.